Let's get right into it. We've got the Redmi K30 versus the Realme X2 and the Redmi Note 8 Pro. If you're looking for one of these phones, the other two are absolutely direct competitors to it. Both the Realme X2 and the Redmi Note 8 Pro have the same 64 megapixel sensor. The Redmi K30 also has a 64 megapixel sensor, but it's a newer Sony sensor, the IMX686. In video, I'm looking for two things: dynamic range, that's the difference between the light and dark areas, and also stabilization. This shot tests both because the foreground is relatively dark, whereas the background is very bright. So you can see the HDR and stabilization side by side. As the Redmi K30 and the Realme X2 have the same processor, but different cameras, and the Realme X2 and the Redmi Note 8 Pro have the same cameras, but different processors, it's very interesting to see the differences between how all the phones manage this test. So one of the main selling points of the newly released Redmi K30 is that 64 megapixel Sony sensor, the first phone to carry it, and we'll be seeing it in a lot more phones. Here is what the phones can do and what they're carrying on board. As you can see, it is extremely similar between the three phones. None of them have dedicated zoom cameras, but we'll test that anyway to see how the digital cropping or digital zooming is amongst the phones. It must also be said that as the Redmi K30 is brand new and recently released, Xiaomi and Redmi would have had less time to work on the software. Software makes an absolutely gigantic difference. And so I do expect the camera on the Redmi K30 and following phones with this sensor to get better and better when software updates are rolled out. Zoom for video again is a digital crop on the sensor. This now is a 6x crop, probably something you wouldn't do too often as it does get very noisy. Today was a very bright and sunny day, and that means that there were very harsh differences between light areas and dark areas. So we're really pushing the phones to expose the image properly all around. This will be more down to the processors involved. So you might see some differences here between the 730G chipset and the MediaTek chipset. I do think though that the color reproduction across all the lenses from the ultra wide to the main camera on all of the phones actually kept very good consistency in color, so that's a good thing. But overall, price and availability may be the biggest factor for you because the results amongst all the phones definitely are very similar. However, overall throughout the test, I do think that the X2 and the Redmi K30 do pull ahead the Note 8 Pro slightly, especially when you take dynamic range and video stabilization into account. However, other than that, it really is just a case of different color profiles and exposures that you get between the phones. So a lot of that is going to be down to personal preference. 64 megapixel on the mode, as you can see here, is a cool feature, although I'm not sure many of us will use it that often. I saw some big differences in the selfie cameras between them, and I personally preferred the Realme X2s. If you look at the background, you can see it's really well exposed with the Realme, but the two Redmi phones blow it out completely. So overall, I do give the points to the Realme X2 here. Portrait mode's also a really cool feature. The K30 has a dedicated time of flight sensor on the front to help with portraits. And as you can see, zooming in, it does a really good job separating me from the background. The Realme X2 also has this feature. It doesn't have a depth sensor on the front, but I think the images it produces, as you can see here, are comparable anyway. Overall, I thought the Realme X2 had slightly better results and dynamic range from the front camera than the other two Redmi phones. Just listen for the audio in the three cameras and check out the background because I am in the shade right now and the background is really, really bright, so check out the HDR. There's also a lot of noise coming from that road over there, so check out how the phones deal with background noise, trying to isolate my voice, my audio, and just general quality of the very bright and dark scenes. So we're really testing out how the cameras can try and make the scene look a little bit better than it actually is. When it came to night mode, I thought the X2 and the K30 had better dynamic range than the Note 8 Pro. I've turned one light off here, and now I will turn all the lights off. So this picture is taken normally without night mode, and now switching to night mode, you can see it brightens up the scene in all of the phones. Video was a similar story with the dynamic range on the Note 8 Pro just a little worse than the other two in my opinion. But considering here it's almost complete darkness, I think all three phones did a decent job. Subscribe for all the latest tech news and tech videos. That's it for now, but I'll see you in the next one.